Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining me tonight. So I'm going to be giving you a nice overview of nutrition to help you with your goals. The way it's going to run is I'll kind of talk for about, hopefully around 45 minutes, 50 minutes. And then there'll be a chance for some Q&A at the end. Hopefully you'll have some nice questions. What I suggest you do is pop some questions in the chat box, and Kat and Emily will just monitor that, and we'll just go through them at the end. So if that's okay with everyone. So yeah, thank you very much for joining me. I know there'll be some of you who may recognise me from Derby OTF because I've been, well, a while ago now, to a few classes. I've spoken to you guys before, and I came to the partner market a few months ago. I can't even remember when that was now. So yeah, so hi to everyone else who's not met me. Yeah, okay, now I'm having why is that not moving on? That's moving on. Okay, the joys of technology. So today I'm basically going to be giving an overview, just a little bit about myself, so you know a little bit about me and my background. I'm going to talk to you again very briefly about what I believe are the fundamentals of well-being. So it isn't just around food. I'm going to talk to you about the 3 macronutrients, a very short overview of a few key micronutrients that will be of interest to you guys. I'm going to talk to you about the importance of hydration and answering the question about whether you may need supplements or not. And hopefully you'll be pleasantly surprised. Then I'm going to talk to you about some performance nutrition basics. So really how to help you use nutrition to fuel you for your workouts and your goals at OTF. And then we're going to finish with a bit of myth busting, which hopefully by the end of it, and you sort of got a flavour for what I'm saying, you'll be able to guess the answers to these. Hopefully it'll be interactive. So please, by that stage, Kat, I think we'll unmute and people can join in. And then, like I say, at the end, there'll be time for some Q&A. So just very briefly, a little bit about me. I previously worked as a police officer for far too long, although I did enjoy it. And I've done a massive career change now, and then went to Sheffield Hallam Uni to study nutrition. So I did my degree there and graduated with a first class honours. And I've since become what is known as an associate registered nutritionist. So what that means is that I'm accredited through the Association for Nutrition. And I think that's important. And it's something that I think you guys should know about, is because a nutritionist isn't a protected title. So anyone can actually call themselves a nutritionist or a nutrition coach, and they can do that with like a weekend online course or something like that. It's really important for you, I believe, that you get your nutrition information from someone who's got a good, solid background. So to be accredited with the AFN, you have to have at least an undergrad degree in nutrition. We have to adhere to a code of ethics, we have to do continuous professional development, and we have to submit a portfolio to show that we know what we're doing. So if you're ever looking for nutrition advice, and I'm not saying you have to come to me for that, but do look for someone who's accredited with the AFN, and then you know you're going to get evidence-based advice. So that's my little preach over with. I'm based in Derby. I do one-to-one consultations, which I do over Zoom, so I can work with anyone, anywhere, basically. And I specialize in, well, a few things really. Lifestyle nutrition is things like, like just general checking that your diet's giving you the nutrients you need, gut health, menopausal nutrition, that kind of thing. Performance nutrition for sports and gym going. And then I've recently, quite a while ago now, qualified as an intuitive eating training. So I use what's called like a non-diet approach. So I'm not a nutritionist that will advocate like heavy restriction and that kind of thing. So yeah, I'm more about listening to your body and learning about nutrition. So my approach, today I'm going to be giving you what will be like quite a generic overview. I can't give tailored advice in this kind of scenario because you'll all have different needs. As it says there, one size does not fit all when it comes to nutrition. You will all have different goals, different foods that you like and dislike. Some of you may have allergies or intolerances. Some of you may like to cook, some may not. You have different lifestyles. So when you give nutrition advice, you need to sort of tailor it to that person's individual needs. So today it's going to be quite generic, but it's a really good starter for 10 for you. My approach, again, is very much around overall health and well-being. So I use this term, find your healthy. And as you'll see, as we go through the talk, I'm very keen on improving overall health and well-being. So that's mind as well as body. I'm client-centered, so that's just a posh way of saying that I work with you to help you achieve your goals. So again, I don't give like prescriptive meal plans, because I want you to learn how to think for yourself and learn good nutrition for yourself so you can apply it to suit your needs. And as I said earlier, I'm very anti kind of restrictive or fad diets. So we'll probably come on to that a little bit later, certainly in the myth busting, but I advocate kind of adding in. So look at what food you can add to your diet rather than what foods you should be taking away. So these are my fundamentals as I see them in terms of overall good health. So you may be wondering why sleep's on there. Sleep is very important, and if you're ever sleep deprived, then you'll know why. So when it comes to nutrition, if you're chronically tired and sleep deprived, it can impact your hunger and fullness hormones. So what you may find then is that I'm sure we've all experienced this at some point, where you're absolutely shattered, and then the next day all you want to do is eat chocolate, cake, you want in that quick sugar hit and that energy. And that's because our hormones are kind of out of whack with a lack of sleep. It also means you're probably less likely to go ahead with some physical activity. So it's kind of like a vicious cycle. And the same with stress. Stress can increase your cortisol, which is not good for your overall well-being. And again, if you're stressed and not feeling great about yourself, then you may not make some healthy food choices. So it's all kind of interlinked. But the bottom three are the ones I'm going to focus on today. So your overall nutrition, your hydration, and supplementation. The key thing I want you to take away from today, if nothing else, is really the importance of building healthy habits over the long term. It's what you do over the months and years that really matters. It's not, if you have a takeaway one night, or you have like that slice of cake, or you go out, that's absolutely fine. And I always advocate that with clients. You shouldn't restrict in that way. It's what you do over the weeks and months, those healthy habits overall, that's going to make a difference to your overall health. You don't suddenly put on a load of weight because you've had one takeaway, in the same way you don't lose a load of weight just because you've had one day of great eating. Right, so we're going to move on now to the actual kind of overview of nutrition. So apologies if some of you have already got this kind of knowledge, but I'm just going to give an overview today. So when it comes to macros, I could probably spend the whole hour talking about each of them. So this is just an overview. So macronutrients are our carbohydrates, our protein, and our fats. Carbs I'm going to start with. Now, carbs get a bad press. There's lots of, advocates of low carb diets and people thinking that eating carbs makes you fat. But I would say to you, don't fear the carbs. Carbohydrates are our body's main source of energy. So particularly when we're exercising, and also for our brain, our body needs glucose, which it converts to glycogen. So when you're doing your training at OTF, carbs are what's fueling it predominantly. So it's really important to get a good workout to be getting the carbs in. That being said, I think it's fair to say they're not kind of the same. I won't say equal, because every carb has its place and every food has its place in context. But what we should be looking to eat in terms of carbohydrates is a nice mix of the starchy carbs, such as your potatoes, bread, rice, pasta, and whole grain if possible, fruits and vegetables. And then you've also got things like your what we call sort of simple carbs, which are more like your simple sugars. So your chocolate, cake, that kind of thing, which again, in moderation is absolutely fine. One thing that is actually comes under the umbrella, if you like, of carbohydrates is fiber. And our fiber sounds really boring, and I'm sure you'll all think back to like all brand adverts when you were younger and things like that. But fiber is really a really important nutrient. It helps keep us fuller for longer, for starters. So it's a good way of kind of helping you stop snacking by having plenty of fiber in your diet. And it's also really good for our gut health and our heart health. Now, I was speaking to Kat earlier, and it's obviously Heart Health Month this month. So, one of the things you could try and make a change of this month is trying to up your fiber. As dietary requirements go, we should be aiming to have around 30 grams of fiber a day. And nationally, we're kind of not achieving that. We're generally having about 19. So we do need to really try and make an effort to increase our fiber. So that's things like having more vegetables, more grains, more fruit, more nuts and seeds, like whole grains. All of that is great for fiber. So simple things like having the skin on your jacket potato will help increase fiber. One thing I will say about the fiber is if you don't eat a lot of fruit and veg or things like that at the moment, go steady when you increase it, because if you go from like 0 to full tilt, then your gut is going to know about it. And I won't go into any more detail in case you've just eaten. So what we should be aiming for in terms of fruit and veg then is at least 5 portions a day. And a portion is 80 grams. That's kind of like a handful, generally speaking, or like, I think like 7 strawberries or something like that. Always try and add a little bit more fruit and veg into your diet if you can. So again, like I say, always think about adding. So some tips that I would recommend, things like using frozen fruit, because it's really cheap, it doesn't go off, so you're not getting any spoilage, and you can add that to your smoothies. You could add it to porridge, to cereal, have it with Greek yogurt. It's a really cheap and easy way to do it. Frozen veg is also great, and frozen is brilliant because it kind of locks in the nutrients when it's frozen, so it's really healthy. Adding in vegetables to things like your curries, having extra veg in stir fries. We're in the winter months, so if you've got a slow cooker, doing something in there like chilies and stews, and just adding a little bit extra in. So whether that's adding in something new that you know, like adding extra carrots, leeks, onions, peppers, mushrooms, or you could go along the lines of adding in some beans, like black beans, kidney beans, or some lentils. And lentils, red lentils, are a really good substitute for meat. You could kind of do half and half. So if you're doing a bolognese or something like that, or a chili, you could add in lentils as well as the meat. So that is our carbohydrates. I'll move on to protein now. So protein is really important for pretty much every function in the body. You'll find protein. So it's not just about gaining your muscles. Protein, you can find, well, the other thing about protein as well as fiber is it actually helps keep us fuller for longer. So the way our body metabolizes protein, it takes that little bit longer, and it's harder for the body to do that. So it does help keep us fuller for longer. So again, in terms of things like thinking about trying to avoid the snacking, making sure you have protein in all your meals is a really good tip. So we find protein, you know, we'll probably automatically think of the likes of meat, fish, eggs, dairy, but you can, if you're veggie or vegan, also get a ton of protein from plant-based sources. So things like chickpeas, lentils, oats also contain protein. You could have your beans, nuts, seeds, and then you've got things like corn and quinoa and soy products as well. So if you like soy milk or soy yogurt, they're great sources of protein. The only sort of thing that veggies and vegans need to be aware of, if you're not getting these protein sources from animals, plant-based protein doesn't contain all the essential amino acids that our body needs. So what we do need to do is try and make sure we're getting a mix of plant proteins across the day. It doesn't have to be in every meal, but across the day, try and get a mix of different sources, and then you're going to get everything that you need. So finally, fats. So fats are higher in calories per gram than protein and carbs. So carbs and protein are both 4 calories per gram, and fats are 9. So they are what we call more energy dense. That being said, again, it's something that you shouldn't fear. Just probably need to be sure you're getting the right kind of fats. So fats are really important for our body in terms of absorbing fat-soluble vitamins, protecting our vital organs, and they're great again for helping us keep fuller for longer. So a little bit of fat in a meal, I think we all know that it tastes nice, and it also feels, you know, it's a nice thing to have a little bit of fat for that satisfaction factor. One thing that I need to point out really in terms of fats is the difference between unsaturated and saturated fats. So our unsaturated fats are the ones we should be aiming for. So these come from things like olive oil, nuts, seeds, avocado, oily fish, the things that you can see on that image in front of you on the screen. These are what probably I'm putting in inverted commas the healthier fats. Saturated fat tends to come again more from animal products, so think your meat and your butter. The only sort of anomaly to this is coconut oil, which had a lot of popularity a few years ago thanks to like the Joe Wicks thing and bulletproof coffee and that kind of stuff. Coconut oil is a saturated fat, and it's actually got higher saturated fat content than butter. So people think it's really healthy, but it's not so great, again, if we're thinking about heart health. So we're thinking heart health, we're thinking unsaturated fats. So where possible, have less saturated and more unsaturated. An important fact to mention, again, for heart and brain health is omega-3, which you may or may not have heard of, but you tend to find it in oily fish and things like walnuts and flax seeds. It's really, really good. It's an essential fatty acid that we have to get from food. So if you're looking to have a little bit of fat in your meal, then things like oily fish, that's salmon, mackerel, sardines, doesn't include tuna. It used to, but it doesn't anymore. Yeah, try and get some omega-3 into your diet. If you're veggie or vegan, you may need to supplement because we can't get as much from plant-based sources. So they're the 3 macronutrients. And if you want to get a kind of overall idea of how much you should have, like, so if you imagine your plate, how many carbs, what's that ratio, protein, fat, carbs, there's a really helpful resource called the Eat Well Guide, which if you Google, you can find an image of. It's quite generic, so it doesn't necessarily suit everyone depending on your goals, but it will give you an idea of roughly what are carbs, proteins and fats, and roughly the proportion you should have. There's also a vegan version available as well. And finally, there's another diet plan, well, plan's not right the way, but a diet called the Mediterranean diet that some of you may have heard of. There's lots of studies out there that suggest this Mediterranean style diet is really good for overall health and well-being. And that's not just things like heart health, it's also mental health. There's been a really interesting study how it helped with depression patients. So the Med diet looks very much like, again, plenty of fruit and vegetables, fish, not so much red meat, but things like olive oil and avocados and nuts and seeds. And it also advocates a nice glass of red wine. So I'm all for that. Just going to grab some water. So we're now going to move on to micronutrients. So these are our vitamins and minerals. And as you can see kind of on the images, there's lots of them. There's a lot of minerals, so I'm not going to go through them all. That would take all night. But I wanted to just focus on a few key ones that may be of relevance to you guys. The first thing I want to say is there's a difference between water and fat soluble vitamins. So water soluble are our B and C vitamins. And all that really means is that if you have too much, you're just going to pee it out. So if you're buying expensive vitamin C supplements in the hope of warding off colds because we're in winter, it's probably not worth your money. Most people can get all the vitamin C they need from food. So yeah, it's just expensive basically. Fat soluble vitamins our body retains, so they are vitamins A, D, E and K, and we can get too much of a good thing with fat soluble vitamins, so that's something to be aware of. For example, vitamin A, too much of that in pregnancy can have an impact on the unborn child, which is why you're not allowed to eat too much liver, things like that when you're pregnant. Vitamin D, that's really important to mention that because we can't really get a lot of vitamin D from food. We actually get it from UV rays from the sun. So in the winter, we struggle because basically there's not enough sun out there. So the recommendations are that you should supplement every day with vitamin D of at least 10 micrograms a day. B12 is another one that's quite common for deficiency, particularly if you're vegan, because it only comes from animal sources. So if you are vegan, or if you're veggie and you don't have a lot of dairy, then you should be looking at fortified foods. So for example, your plant milks, make sure that they're fortified with vitamin B12, and they're normally fortified with things like calcium, vitamin D as well. Minerals of note then. So we've got calcium, which works in conjunction with vitamin D. It's really good for your bone health. So calcium, again, some people can be deficient. So if you're not eating a lot of foods with calcium in, again, things like dairy, good sources, but you can get it from green leafy veg. It may be worth thinking about a supplement. And the calcium and vitamin D combo is really important, particularly females, for bone health. And it sounds really boring, but certainly when we reach a certain age and hit the menopause and our estrogen levels drop off, that's when it impacts our bone density. And that's when we can become more prone to things like osteoporosis. So making sure you've got the calcium and vitamin D, along with things like weight-bearing exercise, are really important for bone health. The next one is iron. And again, very female centric here, but a lot of females can be deficient in iron through the menstrual cycle. It's really common iron deficiency. And iron's really important because it transports our red blood cells around. So again, it's really important for energy. So symptoms of iron deficiency will include feeling very tired and breathless. And you can get that diagnosed with a simple blood test with your GP. Foods that are good for iron are red meat, things like tuna is quite good, and turkey, chicken, but also there's loads of iron in plant-based sources such as green leafy veg, fortified cereals, and things like bran flakes, for example, and dried fruits like apricots are really high in iron. But one thing to be aware of in terms of plant-based iron is our body doesn't absorb it as well as animal-based iron or animal-sourced iron. So there's certain things that can interact in the body. So if you have, for example, a cup of tea or coffee when you have your meal or just after your meal, that can actually stop some of the iron from being absorbed. Conversely, if you have a source of vitamin C with your iron, that helps your body absorb. So if you are having like some green leafy veg, then like a squeeze of lemon juice on there, having it with red pepper or broccoli, it's got vitamin C, will help absorb that iron, or simply just have a small glass of orange juice with it. And finally, I put iodine on there because it's a nutrient that's becoming of more interest because we're moving to more plant-based options. Iodine again comes from fish and from dairy. And so we're becoming more and more deficient nowadays. And iodine is linked to good thyroid function. So again, can impact your energy levels, and again, can be diagnosed. Like if you're deficient, it can be diagnosed through a simple blood test. So if you are vegan, that is a nutrient to be aware of, and you may need supplementation or look out for fortified foods. So the next thing I want to talk about is hydration. Now, as you can see, I've got water. I'm never without water. I'm always having a drink. Hydration is really, really important. Our bodies are kind of about 50–60% made up of water. So if you are dehydrated, and water is used in the body for things like digestion, metabolic reactions, and obviously regulating our body temperature. So when you sweat, for example, that's our body regulating our temperature. Dehydration will impact your health, and it will certainly impact your performance in the gym. So signs that you're dehydrated could be having headaches, feeling sluggish and nauseous. But a really simple way of checking whether you're dehydrated is doing a pee check. It should be a light straw colour. Now, chances are in the morning, first thing, it's not going to be because you haven't had a drink for 8 hours or so. But during the day, it's a sign if you've got dark wee that you are a little bit dehydrated. We should be aiming for about 2 litres a day of water, more if it's hot weather and you're exercising hard. That being said, it doesn't have to be water. Like, I know not everyone likes water. It's pretty boring, but it is free, and there's no calories. But if you don't like it, there's nothing wrong with adding some cordial or squash. There's nothing wrong with adding things like slices of lemon, lime, orange, in the summer, like cucumber and mint's really nice. And absolutely, tea and coffee is fine, as long as you can tolerate the caffeine, which is another story, but that they still do hydrate you. But just try and keep drinking throughout the day. The sports drinks, I'm going to kind of cover that later, but the chances are, unless you're doing kind of long endurance sessions, you don't really need sports drinks. So the next thing I want to briefly mention is adaptations and supplementation. So most nutritionists, and for any nutritionist that's worth their salt, should not be trying to flog you or encourage you to take supplements unless it's necessary. A food first approach is what I advocate. Firstly, because it's cheaper, you don't have to spend a fortune on supplements, and actually the way the body works, we absorb the nutrients much better from food rather than supplements. That being said, there is a place for adaptations because people's dietary preferences, for example, you're vegan, or if you have allergies or intolerances, so you could be gluten intolerant, celiac disease, that kind of thing. So if you can't get all the nutrients you need from food, then you'll be looking out for fortified foods. As I said earlier, plant milks, cereals are fortified, wheat flour is fortified. So you're going to get hopefully what you need from these fortified foods or supplements. So like I say, vitamin D is a given in the winter months. So that's between October and April. But some of you may need like B12 if you're vegan, omega-3, those kind of things. But it's always worth getting advice before spending a fortune on supplements that may not be giving you any benefit. Supplements are good if you are likely to be deficient or are deficient. So I'm now going to move on to performance nutrition. So what that really means is how nutrition can enhance your training performance. We're going to look at kind of the sort of things you should be looking to eat and when and that kind of thing. So the basics in terms of overview, the first things first, if you think of like a pyramid, the bottom bit, the foundation, the bit that's most important is making sure you're having an adequate energy intake. So that's making sure that you're having enough calories, basically. It's really surprising, I think, you will find that most people, a lot of people, not most, but a lot of people don't eat enough to fuel their training. This is particularly true when your goal is weight or fat loss. So if you're looking for a calorie deficit, but you're also looking to increase your training. And there's a real sweet spot between the two, really, of making sure that you're having enough food to get through the day and your exercise as well, without maybe having too much. Long-term underfueling of exercise can lead to the risk of illness, injury, and loss of muscle mass. So again, depends on your goal. So you don't want to get injured and you may not want to lose your muscle mass. Female athletes in particular, sort of chronic long-term underfueling may lead to you losing your period. And if this happens, it's like a real red flag in terms of needing some professional help. So once we've kind of worked out your energy level, then the next thing is to look that you're getting sufficient carbs. As I said earlier, carbs are your body's main source of energy, and they're certainly your fuel for the kind of exercise you're doing at OTF. So in our bodies, our carbs are transferred into what's called glycogen, which is stored in our liver and our muscles. And this is what fuels you. So carbs are the fuel for like anaerobic, aerobic exercise, especially high intensity. So when you get on that treadmill, beginning your session or the rower, the first fuel that your body's going to use is carbs. And it's probably just going to use carbs for the whole session, to be fair, because you're training for generally no more than an hour. So if you're not eating enough carbs, you're not getting the fuel for your workout. Protein is also important. It is not a source of fuel unless the body is absolutely desperate. It's really inefficient. So, protein is the last resort for fuel, but it is really important for muscle repair and growth through what's called muscle protein synthesis. Easy for me to say. Unlike carbs and fats, our body doesn't store protein in the body. So it's used for all these different functions within the body, and then whatever's left over is excreted. So it's really important, I think I said earlier, that you should be getting protein in all your meals and snacks ideally, because the way the body works, you need to be getting it sort of across the day. A lot of people kind of don't have a lot of protein in breakfast and then have most of their protein later in the day. What we really need to be doing is having a little bit and often for the optimum kind of muscle growth. Also, again, as I said earlier, protein's excellent for helping keep you full for longer. So if you're having protein in those meals and snacks, you're less likely to hit some of these so unhealthy snacks, if you like, and get that dip in energy. If your goal is around muscle growth for strength training and that part of your training, then protein is particularly important. Fats are also used for fuel. So particularly in endurance training. So once our bodies have used up all our glycogen stores, it will then move into burning fat as a fuel. It's actually a really abundant source of fuel, but it's not very efficient. So that's why our body will always use carbs first. It takes quite a while to sort of get the energy from fats. So if you're doing long runs or cycles or things like that, then you're going to start going into fat burning. You would also potentially burn fat if you train fasted. So if you train first thing in the morning before eating anything, your body probably hasn't got a lot of glycogen stored. They have a finite amount because you've not eaten. So you're more likely to use fat for your fuel. Hydration, as I covered it a little bit earlier, it's really, really important. You always need to make sure that you're hydrated before you start your training session. So I'd recommend doing a little P-check about 2-3 hours before you train. Just check, and it gives you plenty of time to be getting some water or whatever into your system so you're hydrated before you start. If you exercise first thing in the morning, I'd highly recommend just having about 500 mils, that's about a pint of water if you can, as soon as possible to get hydrated before you exercise. So I mentioned supplementation earlier in terms of general nutrition, but do you need supplements for sports nutrition and for your performance? Generally speaking, for like the general population, probably not. So this is more of the high level athlete. But that being said, there are some things that you may want to look at using. For example, it's probably not really a supplement, but it's a performance enhancer, is caffeine. There are lots of studies that show it's effective in enhancing performance. So if you are a coffee drinker and you like your coffee, if you have an espresso about an hour before you train, then that can help enhance your performance and help you go a little bit harder, a little bit longer. Creatine is another supplement that you may have heard of. What creatine does, it can help, again, sustain higher intensity for longer, so that all-out effort for longer, and help you recover quicker between sessions. So like if you think powerlifters, sprinters, HIIT training would be sort of the applicable thing for you guys. But generally speaking, it's not really needed. If you want to try it, but it's not essential by any stretch. Another thing that people talk about a lot is BCAAs, branched chain amino acids, and you'll see people in gyms chugging like those drinks. There's less evidence around BCAAs as being effective. Essentially, if you're already having your protein intake through food and having a good intake of carbs, you don't need BCAAs, so don't waste your money. Sports drinks and gels can be useful, and they're certainly essential for endurance sports, but for your sessions in OTF, you're not going to need them. These are for like long runs and cycle rides where you're going to run out of your your glycogen stores, your carbs, so you need to refuel and rehydrate if you're going on a long run. And then finally, the one I wanted to mention was just protein powder. So really, really popular, really common, and it's a really convenient way of getting some protein into your diet really quickly and easily. That being said, again, most people, general population, can get the protein amount that they need from their diet. But it is a convenient way if you just want to grab like a 20-gram hit of protein, and again, as an easy snack on the go, or after you've trained, or whenever, basically. It's definitely worth an option, but you don't need it. So if someone's saying to you, you need to have protein powder, you absolutely don't. And again, a nutritionist can look at your diet and see if you're getting enough protein without spending lots of money. So we kind of talked about the theory, but what about the practicality of it? What does this really look like? As I said at the very beginning, this talk is a general overview. So in terms of individual needs, your goals, your training, your lifestyle is going to be highly individual. So a nutritionist can look at, on a one-to-one basis, exactly how many carbs you need a day, exactly how much protein you need in like meals and snacks. But generally speaking, as a rule of thumb, try and get a nice mix of carbohydrates, protein, and a little bit of unsaturated fat into your meals, and you're on to a winner. Like I say, that protein to get across the day to help with your muscle repair and growth, and the carbs for the energy, and a little bit of fat. So these things here, I just wanted to make it kind of, I wanted to stress it doesn't have to be complicated. Like, it doesn't have to be some flashy meal. You can get what you need from sort of quite basic options. So like I always say, cheese and beans on toast is a winner for me, or on a jacket potato. You are getting a really good source of protein. There's fiber in there, there's fat. And if you have like whole grain bread, whole wheat bread, you're having a really good source of carbs and again, fiber. So it's just super simple, really quick, really cheap. The same with the jacket potato there. You can see if you have, as I said earlier, if you have the skin, you're getting the fiber. You've got tuna on there, which is a great source of protein, is really cheap. Sweet corn again for the fiber and the vegetables, a little bit of fat with the mayo, and maybe a salad. It's just an all-round kind of dish. White potatoes are a great source of vitamin C and potassium. Sweet potatoes are a good source of vitamin A. So just have a mix, whatever you like, basically. I think that's the biggest takeaway in terms of like helping people with their nutrition is, what do you actually like to eat? Because if you don't enjoy it, you're not going to want to carry on with it. So if you're looking to make changes and build healthy habits, work on things that you actually enjoy to eat. We've got pasta there. So again, ideally whole wheat pasta, but it's not to everyone's taste. And white pasta, white rice is absolutely fine. You've got like a tomatoey kind of veggie sauce there. I would ideally add in a source of protein. So whether that's like chicken or salmon or tuna, or again, from a veggie point of view, some chickpeas in there just to give you that protein. Just make it a more all-round meal, and add in some extra veggies as well. Scrambled egg on toast or any kind of egg. Eggs are like little powerhouses of nutrition, really, really good. And there was a myth, oh God, quite a few years ago now, that like cholesterol in eggs, you don't eat eggs because they're high in cholesterol, therefore you'll get high cholesterol. That's absolute rubbish. That's not how cholesterol works. So again, in terms of heart health, eggs absolutely fine. Really good source of protein. And then if you have like, again, the brown bread, you're getting that nice mix. Chilies, you could, again, as I said earlier, if you want to add in more veg, just add in extra veg like that you like, just to plump it up, or add in extra beans. There's loads of different beans you can try, or add in some lentils. And then for breakfast, I think people struggle more with breakfast. Try and get some protein into your breakfast, because that will help sustain you all morning, so you're not like desperately looking at the snacks at 10:30. Here we've just got overnight oats, which are not everyone's taste, I know, but if you like porridge or something, or I would recommend, these are really good to like make in advance. So if you're in a rush in the morning, do it the night before, and then it's kind of good to go, and it's portable. If you're having like porridge or overnight oats, I always add a little bit of Greek yogurt, because it's nice and high in protein and it helps keep me full. I don't actually personally think oats are that filling, but for some people they are really filling. And oats are really good because they have what's called beta glucans in them. So again, really good for your heart health. So if you're having kind of a porridge or overnight oat combo, get some protein in there, add in some fruit, whatever you like, and maybe sprinkle on some nuts and seeds as well. So you're getting a really good source of fiber, protein, and some healthy fats. So these are all really good balanced meals. But like I say, whatever you like and enjoy, that's the most important thing. In terms of quantities and things like that, obviously we can do specific detail, like I said earlier, on an individual basis. But if you're thinking as a general rule of thumb, if you are feeling pretty sluggish and unenergetic, so I don't know if that's a word, and you haven't upped your training amount or intensity, the chances are you're probably not having enough carbs, because you need that for the energy. If you're feeling really sluggish, it may be that you've eaten too soon to training, but it may be having too many carbs. So it's about listening to your body, trying out different things and seeing what works for you in your lifestyle. The same goes for snacks. I am a big snacker. I love a snack. And again, when you're thinking about your kind of workout, so if you're looking to train after work, the chances are you probably, if you don't eat between, say, like, I don't know, 12:30, 1 o'clock, and then you're at a 6 o'clock class, that's a long time to go without any fuel on board. So I would always say have an afternoon snack and have something that contains some carbohydrates to give you that energy to get through the session. Then after training, again, depending on when you train, if you're going home and having a meal, that's fine. But say you train in the morning and you want a post-workout snack later that morning, have something that involves carbs to replenish the glycogen stores, and also protein for recovery, so that muscle repair and muscle growth. Again, it depends on lifestyle and taste of what's going to work for you. So again, the rule of thumb is eat what you enjoy eating, what works with your lifestyle. If you are at work or you're out traveling and you need things on the go, then things like granola bars, yogurt pots, maybe even a protein shaker are really good. Things like having a little Tupperware pot of nuts and seeds is another great way of getting a bit of energy in before training that you could just carry around with you. Bananas are a great pre-workout snack. So again, like, if you train in the morning and you can't face, or you don't get up early enough, because I'm always the last minute getting up, if you haven't got time to have breakfast before you train, try and have something at least. So it could be a banana, it could be a small pot of yogurt with some berries, or a smoothie, that kind of thing. And if you're doing a smoothie, always put some veg in, which sounds disgusting, but if you use spinach, you just can't taste it. So if you put in spinach, some fruit, and maybe some nuts and seeds as well, then again, you're getting that balance. And try and get some protein in there. So you could just put some protein powder in there, use soy milk, that kind of thing. And again, you're getting that nice balance. But they're a really good thing to have on the go. And again, I'm all about simple. So we've got toast there. A slice of toast with some jam or nut butter is a really good little snack. Hummus and carrot, or hummus and whatever. I love hummus, and chickpeas are great because they're a great protein source and great fiber source as well. So it really, again, depends on your goals and your individual needs, but having some kind of snack pre-workout that involves carbs and post-workout that has carbs and protein is the kind of thing you're looking for. But like I say, if you're going to be eating after you train, then you don't need to worry about the post-workout snack. Just have a meal that contains protein and carbs. If you are training twice a day, which I'm guessing probably not many of you do, then snacks are going to be important because you really do need to get the carbs on board. But if you are, then that's something we could perhaps talk about afterwards. So, timing. So I've just been talking there about if you train in the morning, if you train in the evening, it's going to look different for all of you. Timing is important in the sense that you really don't want to be eating a big meal too close to training. So if you're having a meal, ideally 2 to 4 hours before, to give your body time to digest it. I'm sure we've all been there. I know I have, where I've eaten a little bit too close to training and then felt quite nauseous and very heavy. It's not a good feeling. You don't want that when you're mid-burpee. If you're having a little pre-workout snack, again, ideally around about an hour and a half, 2 hours tops before snacking. And I wouldn't go any closer to 30 minutes before you train. Again, you just need to give your body a chance to start digesting that snack. During training, for you guys in terms of OTF classes, absolutely not necessary. If you are, outside of class doing these long runs and cycles and things again, or if you play a 90-minute football game, you're probably going to need something to get the carbs back on and the rehydration. So that's where your sports gels and drinks and maybe some snacks can come in handy. After, again, as I said earlier, it kind of depends on when you're training and how that fits in with your daily routine. So if you're going to have a meal after training, then, that's great. If not, then some snack, as long as the snack or the meal has got that the carbs in and the protein for your recovery and repair, then it's all good. And as I say, go with what you enjoy and experiment with different things and find out what works for you and your lifestyle. So, how am I doing for time? Oh, brilliant. Kat, do you want to take off the mute thing and we can do a bit of myth busting?
Yeah, sounds good.
Love a bit of myth busting. So feel free to either put it in the chat or come off mute and talk. That's great. You don't have to go on camera if you don't want to. But there's a few things that come up really regularly in terms of nutrition and myths. And what I want to say beforehand is there's so much nutrition information out there. It's such a hot topic. It has been for the last couple of years. You can read stuff on social media, TikTok, little trends and things. And everyone says something slightly different. So it is really confusing. And nutrition is not black and white. Nutrition is shades of grey because everyone is so different and everyone has different needs. And this is why it's really important, as I said at the start, to get your nutrition information from someone who has got the relevant qualifications, basically, rather than a social media influencer who's just trying to flog you a supplement or a detox tea. Do not buy detox teas. So the first myth then, I think we've probably got the answer to this from what I said earlier, but carbs will make you fat. So eating carbs makes you fat. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Carbs are life.
Carbs are life, yeah. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, I think I must have said it quite a lot. And, one of my key messages is carbs are what we need just for daily life to survive. If you've ever done keto, and I'm going to talk about keto in a minute, and you probably have experienced what's called brain fog. because you're not having the carbs, and it just completely, it's not good. So eating carbs per se will not make you fat. Again, this is where the nuance is. It depends on what the carbs are. So if you are having your carbs as chips, crisps, cake, etc., then the chances are, yeah, over time it probably is. But if your carbs are, the odd, chips and things here and there, but generally you're having a nice mix of those vegetables, the fruit, all the fiber, it's not going to make you fat. You need carbs. So the next one is eating fat makes you fat. Probably on a similar vein. Any thoughts?
I'm going to chip in again.
Yeah.
So I'm a head coach at Alti.
Hi.
So I think this one stems a lot from the 80s, 90s, where it's that 9 grams, it's take away the biggest number, and obviously you're going to lose weight, but then it's like, as you say, the fat actually gives it the flavor and stuff, and then they're ending up just replacing it with the empty sugars and things. But so a lot of the low fat stuff is actually worse. I would say, but through my years of experience, a lot of the stuff that we deal with now are the preconceptions of stuff that was like coming out of the 70s, the 80s, when it was all like the heart issues and stuff that came out, like, the original Eat Well plate and stuff, and all that kind of stuff. And we're dealing with that now. We're trying to change a lot of like that education. Mindset. And I think that it's that 80s, 90s. My mum very often would buy everything was low sugar, no added sugar, all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, back then it was like normal, but now it's like, actually, if you compare the two products together, like quite often you're like, well, even though this has got fat, this is actually worse for you. So that's a lot of the it's that knowledge, and a lot of it's passed down from parents.
Very much so. Yeah, I think because we kind of learn through growing up, don't we? And we absorb those messages and we just get used to them. But yeah, you're absolutely right, Tom. I mean, it was definitely a thing like low fat, fat equals heart disease, that kind of thing. Fat makes you fat. But yeah, just to make them taste palatable, they were pumped full of additives and sugar. And if you do kind of like a comparison of a low fat version and a full fat, for want of a better phrase, version of a product, I guarantee you will find the full fat nicer and more satiating and more fulfilling and satisfying. You'll probably end up eating less. So again, I don't know whether you guys resonate with like you're trying to be good, you want something nice, a treat, let's say, and you have like a low fat version or a low sugar version, and it just doesn't hit the spot. So you have like probably a whole packet of these low fat products and you're still not satisfied at the end of it, and you could have just had the one thing of what you actually wanted and felt a million times better.
I think it's, for me, the saying is, if you're going to eat cake, just eat the cake. Instead of going for that low fat version, just eat the cake. Just
eat the cake, enjoy the cake.
You'll have one slice and be like, oh, okay, that's all right. Whereas like a low fat version, there's a very good chance that you're going to go back for more of the cake because you want that
exactly
feeling.
Fat gives you I don't like this phrase, mouthfeel, but it does give you a nice mouthfeel, and we do need it, like I say. And if we on the whole focus on the unsaturated fats, then that is absolutely fine. And again, we kind of tie it into this heart health month. Fruit is just sugar, and this comes a lot from especially with those who are worried about type 2 diabetes, and also just the low carb brigade. Basically, fruit is just sugar. Again, don't know what people think about that. There's a lot of fear about fruit.
I think we hear a lot of it, don't we? It is the fear of, fruits traditionally seen as a healthy snack, and it is, absolutely, but people are held back by this fear that they're having supposedly unnecessary sugar.
Yeah. So again, in terms of like the science, so when we have cake, we use the cake analogy, that is sucrose, a simple sugar. Fruit is fructose, and when our body digests fructose, it does it in a different way to sucrose. So it is I'm not saying it's better, but it's different. But also when we have fruit, we're getting all the benefits of the micronutrients, the vitamins and the minerals and the fiber and all the good stuff. So this is why I'm really passionate about saying to people, it's not just about calories in, calories out, and counting calories. It's like all calories are not equal, in the sense that some will have just these added benefits of the fiber and the vitamins and the minerals that you need, your body needs to be its best self. So having fruit is absolutely fine. Even if you are type 2 diabetic, you could absolutely have fruit, and that is on the Diabetes UK website as well. So, you know, they do advocate fruit. Something you can do if you want to stop like a glucose spike is have it with a source of protein or fat. So, you know, everyone's taste a difference, but like apple with peanut butter is quite nice, or the fruit with the Greek yogurt, that kind of combo will just stop the sugar spike. So we talked about protein and getting our gains on, and how important it is for our muscle repair and growth. So the myth here is that you need a protein shake within 20 minutes of a workout. Anyone? I'm sure you'll know about this, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's that extreme information of basically replenishing your resources after an event. So I think it's that kind of thing where, you know, you need to replace your electrolytes, your carbs, you need to your protein, your fats, all that kind of stuff, and have a nice meal after having exercise. But I think it again, it comes from that the selling of the supplements. So if you're saying to people, look, you need to get your protein in straight away, well, I don't want to eat or have anything heavy straight after exercise, I'll have a protein shake. Well, I've got the best protein shake that you want to buy. This is going to really get it going again. And again, it's that mentality of, it's a lot of what is said in the fitness industry is to try and get you to buy stuff. And if someone wants to buy stuff, supplements, they're not thinking of you, they're thinking of their back pocket more than anything.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I have to admit, I have fallen for this back in the day, where I'd go and train, because I'm into my strength training, and be like, right, I'd be in the car in the gym, like doing my protein shake, like, oh, I've got to get it. But science tells us otherwise. So the myth, if you like, that used to be around was like what's called the anabolic window. So the time scale it is to have your protein to get the best growth of muscles. And this 20 minutes, I don't know whether it's come out of gym bro science, no offense to anyone, but the science says as long as you're getting a good protein intake within 24 hours, it's absolutely fine. But like I say, I stressed earlier, the optimum is to have protein, you know, in every meal and snack if you can, just to keep, because our body we take it in like as a graph, and then our body will be using it, digesting it, using it for other things, not just muscle protein synthesis. So our stores will deplete, so we need to keep having it. So following on from this, the more protein the better, which sits very nicely with what you were saying, Tom. Again, I think lots of people have said just you need tons and tons and tons and tons of protein to get your gains on, which is not the case. Yes, if you're in a calorie deficit and you don't want to lose muscle mass, and you want to keep the strength, gaining strength and retaining your muscle mass, or even growing your muscle mass, then you do need a probably higher intake of protein. If you are strength training, you need a higher intake of protein than like your general population do. However, there does reach a point where enough is enough. And as I said earlier, what's not used will be excreted. And in extreme situations, it can affect kidneys, but that's really, really extreme. So, you know, it's not to scare anyone. But more protein is not better. There does become an optimum point where it's just, there's enough. So again, in terms of performance nutrition, there are calculations you can do about how many grams of protein you need to achieve your goals per kilogram of your body weight. But like I say, as a general rule of thumb, just try and get some protein across the day. I think we've covered this quite well. You need supplements for optimum performance. I hope you've got the message that you absolutely don't. If you are getting a nice balanced diet, generally speaking, across the days, weeks, months, you don't. As long as you're eating the right things at roughly the right time, and life gets in the way. It's not always perfect, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Life and diets are not perfect. But as long as you're generally eating well, you're fine.
Sorry, we've actually had a question that might fall into this as well. So
yeah,
get your thoughts on this. So we've had a question saying that someone's read that 3 amino acids in BCAAs will only be effective if the other amino acids are also present. So would there be a benefit in using essential amino acids instead post-workout along with whey protein for faster protein absorption?
I don't know what those 3 are because I've not heard that. So there are certain, lysine is a really important amino acid. So for those who aren't aware, there are around 20 amino acids that our body uses, and amino acids are what they call the building blocks of protein. So there's loads of different combinations of amino acids that our body then uses to do functions across our body. But there are 9 amino acids that we don't get from food. So our body doesn't make itself, so we have to get from food. And some of those are better for muscle growth than others. And lysine is certainly one of them. And off the top of my head, I can't remember what's in the BCAAs because they are specifically branched chain amino acids. And I'd have to look this up. So what I can do is just go back to my book and just double check again. I've probably got something nearby, but I'll have a look and I'll let you know, Kat. So you could put it on when you post. But I would say no, as long as you're having a balanced diet, and this is even if you're plant-based, as long as you're getting a nice mix of sources of proteins, you will get all the amino acids that you need. And you don't need to have them like at the same time. That is really nuanced. And yeah, it's not something that's going to affect you guys, sort of general population doing your training. This is like high level athlete kind of stuff, and where we're talking really marginal gains. So a balanced diet will give you all the amino acids you need. And if you're having meat and dairy products, you get all the amino acids are what we call complete proteins, or that those proteins are complete. So they have all the essential amino acids that you need. So, you know, like I tell you what is a really good recovery option. It's milk. So really underrated, but milk is really good for rehydrating you because your body doesn't quite absorb it as quickly as water, which is really important for rehydration. So you don't want too much too soon. It's got protein in there, and then the lactose is a sugar, which is essentially a carb. So it's like an all-round carbs, protein, rehydration product. So milk is really good. There's no need to like overcomplicate it in my book.
Oh, good, thank you.
So this is my massive bugbear here. Keto, alkaline, fasting, and Fad Diet here are healthy. I think you probably know what I'm going to say, but I don't know whether any of you guys have done any of these kind of like what I would call fad diets, and how that's worked for you and how you felt when you've done them and whether you've been able to sustain them. If I tell you that I've done 5-2, which was awful, but I lost weight, but I was absolutely like a nightmare to be around because I was so hungry. I used to go to bed at about 8 o'clock because I just couldn't take it. When I was on fasting days, I certainly couldn't train on a fasting day. I've done like GI diets, I've done the Weight Watchers and that kind of, I know I've not done like keto or alkaline or anything like that, but like keto is a diet that was keto was designed to help children with epilepsy, and somehow it's kind of got extrapolated into like the low carb brigade, and yeah, it's not what it's designed for, and it's really unsustainable, and anyone who's done it will probably find they can't tolerate it for more than a couple of weeks because it's so restrictive. And if you're not having, so keto is where you have virtually no carbs at all, so you're going to feel terrible and you're not getting any fiber or vegetables. I mean, how's that good for you? Any diet that cuts out an entire food group is a red flag, unless you have an allergy or intolerance to that food group. It's never good. Alkaline is absolute rubbish because all foods turn to acid in our stomach. So you can eat all the alkaline foods you like, but it's going to become acid. Fasting, some people have found like a 16-8 pattern can work for them. I think the bottom line with that kind of fasting diet is that you're probably going to eat less overall because you're eating in such a small window, so you can't physically eat as much. So it's like, but there's so much out there, you know, paleo and all this kind of thing. But generally people can do them for a short time and they generally lose weight on them because they'll be cutting out loads of stuff, and then it's really unsustainable, and then you go back to normal eating and then put the weight back on again and then feel terrible, and then that whole diet cycle starts. So I'm really passionate about sort of people doing things in a really sustained and gradual way, but something that they can sustain for the longer term that isn't going to make them feel terrible or mean that they can't go out with their friends or go out for that meal or enjoy a birthday, that kind of thing. It's all about balance.
I think,
go on, Tom.
Sorry, yeah. It's very much so. I'm vegan, and it's taken me a long while to get my diet sorted and things like that. I can't have dairy; it upsets my sinuses and things, and cutting that out really works for me. But a lot of people think, and I'll say that they will be like, "I'm going to go vegan because I hear you lose lots of weight." I do like 20,000 steps a day. I exercise. I maintain my weight through my vegan diet and stuff like that. But a lot of people think that it's something that they can do to lose weight, and I think that's just purely for the fact that when you first start out, it's that lack of knowledge. You cut out everything, you're gonna lose weight. Whereas something like being obviously vegetarian and veganism is much more of a lifestyle choice and changes through that and education. Whereas I think some people will put in being vegan as a fad diet or something like that because their lack of knowledge in it. Again, it's a lot of what this is fighting against what's on, like, as you say, TikTok and influencers and 80s 90s education, and trying to change that mindset of being like, you need food if you want to sustain the activity levels that you've got and everything like that. You need to fuel yourself, start thinking like an athlete, and an athlete will be like, I am eating this, I'm making sure I'm getting this in to get the most out of their performance. So when it comes to like being on a deficit, obviously you're going to cut down, but it's still the same food, it's still the same amount, like you're just having a little less of it, so you still get to enjoy it.
Or swapping things out, like, you know, adding more veg in, or trying new things, like trying things like pulses and the nuts and the different beans. Like there's so many different beans that are really like filling and can just change things up slightly. So just small changes like that can make a big difference.
So I think that's where the education comes in, of thinking do this diet, I'm going to be healthy doing it. And it's losing that connection of, if I do this, I lose loads of weight. And actually that's not healthy kind of. It's getting away from, do they see really that instant impact, like keto, oh, I've lost loads of weight, or someone I know who's keto has lost loads of weight. I'm like, but like,
come back in a few months' time.
Exactly.
I mean, what you say about vegan diet is, I mean, I have mixed feelings about veganuary. I think it's great to try things out, but it comes at a month when everyone, lots of people are trying to make changes and maybe lose weight. And I think if you're going to embark upon a vegan diet, it is a lifestyle change. You should do it for values and ethics, as opposed to a weight loss regime, if you like. And actually, on the flip side of that, you can be vegan and be incredibly unhealthy. Absolutely.
I know a lot of people who look thin on veganism and they're not healthy. I know a lot of overweight people who are vegans, and their diet is absolutely awful. So I think it's about educating and getting people not to think of this as a short term, is making small steps. Like if anyone says to me about being vegan, I will say, do 1 day a week, gradually change it over time if that's where you want to go with it. Or you might just be like, do you know what, actually 2 days a week I'm going to eat like no animal products and I'm going to eat all of that, and that's great. Like that's, for me, that's fine, I don't mind that. And I think that's, then if someone wants to carry it on, that's when they carry it on. But you just got to constantly educate yourself.
It's a good starting point, because adopting a vegan lifestyle is you know, it's not easy. And if you don't know much about nutrition, then you know it can go horribly wrong, because it does need a little bit of work to understand what to get that optimum nutrition. But it's completely doable, and you can completely, you know, perform well, you can exercise, and then the bottom one is you can meet your protein requirements without eating any meat or fish or dairy. Absolutely. You just need to probably just understand it a bit more and know where because like just things like oats and like whole wheat bread and something that's got protein in it. It might
spinach.
Loads of things have got protein that you don't think. So it's just thinking outside the box and having that knowledge. That is the end of my myth busting. So moving on to questions, I'm going to have a look at the chat if I can see. Excuse me, I've got concentration face. So are there any specific portions for individuals, such as proteins, carbs, fats for women compared to men? No, in the sense of, certainly when it comes to like performance nutrition, if we're looking at carb intake and protein intake for performance, it is done based on your body weight. So again, depending on goals and depending on your training, you will have X amount of grams of carbohydrates per kilogram of body weight per day. And then what we can do is then look at how that might look in practical terms. So how you're going to get those carbs, how you're going to get your protein. In terms of fats, there's no performance nutrition goals or guidelines with fats. It's just the general dietary requirements. So those general dietary requirements are kind of reflected in the Eat Well plate. So I don't necessarily, I'm going to be controversial, I don't necessarily advocate the kind of generic population guidance because it doesn't work for everyone. And I think sometimes people need a bit more protein. So you shouldn't be having any more than, excuse me, 11% of your diet is like saturated fat. And I think, this is where, this is my really basic nutrition. It's like 50% carbs, 30% fat, 20% protein. And that's like the Eat Well guide. I actually think that's quite a high amount of fat and a low amount of protein as a percentage of your daily intake, but they're exactly the same for men and women. So dietary guidelines, again, as a general rule, are 2,500 calories a day for men, 2,000 for women, but these are all very generic. So as I said at the start, everything here is quite generic. You will all have different requirements, and some of you will need less, some of you will need more in terms of calories. And again, depending on goals and dietary requirements, might need different proportions of carbs, proteins and fat. But yeah, that's like the proportion. But I do think perhaps protein and fat should be swapped around. Okay. So we've covered the amino acids. When they'll have a look at the essential amino acid combos. Sorry, I missed the protein part. If I choose to miss a proper lunch dinner to have a protein shake after the training, is there any particular protein shake or protein shake composition that I need to choose, please? My aim is to lean and get fitter. Thanks. I don't know, Cho, if you are a meat or do you eat dairy or not, because I would recommend a whey protein isolate in terms of your protein shake, and make sure when you look at the ingredients that it's mostly protein and not pumped full of fillers, basically. So you do get what you pay for with protein. This is absolutely not sponsored, not an ad or anything, but I use Optimum Nutrition protein because it's like a really high quality one, and it's not full of sugar and crap, basically, that kind of pads it out. So you're getting a high level of protein per gram of actual powder. The other thing is it's used by like professional athletes. So again, you know it's going to be good quality and not something you guys have to worry about, but it's been tested to make sure there's no dodginess in there if you were to be drug tested. If you are plant-based, then you'll be looking for something with probably pea protein or soy protein. But pea protein, again, it's down to taste, but pea protein has quite a good range of amino acids. Tom, I don't know whether you got any recommendations on vegan protein powder, but you've got to try and get those amino acids again, haven't you?
Yeah, I think like with any supplement, a lot of the time it boils down to your own preference. Because I've had some protein powders which, without too much detail, go straight through me.
Yeah.
And some protein powders are absolutely fine and they're really good. So I think a lot of the times with protein powders and with any supplement, it's a supplement to your diet. So if you go, right, okay, I am not getting 20 grams of protein in per day, I can physically not eat any more food, but you need to hit that protein amount, that's where a supplement comes into play.
Yeah.
It's an add-on to whatever it is you're doing.
Yeah.
So
the clue's in the title, isn't it? Supplement.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, again, it's used as I need to get my protein in. I don't know where to get my protein in, so I'm going to have my supplement. It becomes the main thing, whereas it should just be an add-on. Like, I don't have a protein supplement every day. I use Smart Vegan normally, but I have it just when I'm like, I just know, but like I don't have to use like MyFitnessPal and stuff like that. I just know when I'm a little bit low, just through what I've eaten that day, and I'm just like, do you know what? I don't fancy a meal. I have a protein shake. Just like at the end of the day, like 30 grams of protein, drink it, go to bed like an hour later, and that's it. It's like a top up, and things like that. So for me, protein boils down to what you like and the taste of it, and then just add on to your normal food.
Yeah, I think with anything and any supplement, particularly protein powder, because the taste, you've got to just try things out. Don't buy a massive tub of something until you've tried a small sachet first. But Charles put on that they were using put my teeth back in, using meal replacement protein powders and not plant-based. So yeah, there's a time and a place potentially for things like Huel, maybe you're using. I would always say food first if you can. So if you're struggling to get in a meal, is there anything else you can make at your own smoothie, or just grab something on the go that's got even like Huel, My Protein. There are other options for food on the go, and ideally food first if you can. Okay, so next question is, any advice on probiotics, please? Tricky one to answer without context. Probiotics are very trendy at the minute, and I do like a good gut health question. So so probiotics, there's probiotics and prebiotics. So probiotics are like the good bacteria, and there's loads of stuff out there where you can have supplements, unless you are having gut issues, or you've been on a course of antibiotics, which can upset your gut bacteria sort of makeup. You probably don't need them. If you are eating foods, so the prebiotic foods such as onions, leeks, asparagus, that kind of stuff, bananas, if you're having those and you're having no gut issues, you probably don't need probiotics. You can also get things like Greek yogurt has live bacteria in it. If anyone's tried kefir, kombucha, any sauerkraut, those kind of fermented foods, they have live gut bacteria in them. But the jury's kind of out with probiotics. They are very trendy, and you can spend an absolute fortune on them. But again, not all of them can travel through the digestive tract and through your stomach acid and actually reach your large intestine, which is where they need to be, without actually being destroyed. So it's difficult for me to answer without knowing your individual circumstances, but as a rule of thumb, unless you're having gut problems, I wouldn't bother. Would you suggest someone with hypothyroidism still follow generic guidance? Would going lower carb fat make a difference? So hypothyroidism is when your thyroid doesn't work as efficiently, so you can put on weight. That is something very specific. Probably wouldn't follow generic guidance and would need some tailored advice there in terms of thyroid function, and obviously medication, and going to a GP will be the first port of call, because there are medications that you can have to help that thyroid. Iodine is as I said earlier, is a nutrient that can help, or is linked to thyroid function. I don't think going lower carb or fat would make a difference, unless you're just thinking in terms of like calorie deficit, maybe. It's something that's kind of out. It would need like a one-to-one consultation, really, and certainly GP initially in terms of medication. Yep, so covered that. Thanks, Tom. Should I eat less than my BMR to lose weight? So your basal metabolic rate. So I know obviously you guys probably use the body tracks at OTF. I really don't. Again, controversial. I'm not a calorie counting, tracking kind of a nutritionist. you need to be really careful in eating less than your BMR, because your basal metabolic rate is kind of like the lowest level. And, you know, I think I said it earlier, didn't I, around under fueling for your workout. Lots of people eat really low calorie, and then your body just goes into that starvation mode where it's like, I need to hold on to this to function and to survive. And it holds on and slows your metabolism down. So it's, I would say, be careful with that. You probably put that on for a reason, Tom. You're on mute.
Okay. Yeah, it's basically obviously doing a lot of consultations with members a lot of the time when we say, do you know how much you're eating and things like that. So a lot of it, like calorie counting, I think has its place.
Yeah.
I think long term it causes issues, but like even for myself, if I do like a 2-week check-in and where I count everything, I know what I'm doing, especially when I'm training a lot and things like that. So I know what my intake is. And then after that 2 weeks, I go back to just intuitive eating, but I can then guesstimate. And when I think my portions are getting too big, I check in again. But I get a lot of people like, so how many calories you eating? And they're like, well, like, you know, I'm eating 1,200 calories and this kind of stuff. And you're like, you're looking at the BMR and the body traction, you're like, well, you don't go below like 1,500, don't go below like 1,600 and things like that. And obviously it is weight specific and it is own person specific as well. But I always advise people never to go below that number, sort of thing. So just because it's what your body needs. Yeah. So I put it in there mostly
your BMR
because
is really what you need to kind of survive and exist, isn't it, on a daily basis. So your body uses calories all the time and energy all the time just to survive. So that's not just when you're moving around, it's when, you know, you're digesting your food, you're just functioning, your heart beating, everything is using up calories. So obviously then you're kind of ingesting calories, you're expending calories, and if you're training, you're expending more calories. So I know, again, lots of people will be like, it's calories in, calories out. I do think it's more than that. I think, like you say, Tom, you can get a ballpark picture of where you're at. And as a check-in, and it's not right for everyone, but it does work, you know, for some people. As a check-in, you can kind of think, actually, I'm eating more than I thought, or actually, I'm not eating as much as I thought. I mean, my BMR calculation is like something ridiculous, like you say, about 1,600 calories. I would be like collapsing if I had that. Checking in with your body in terms of your energy levels, how you're feeling, is a good way as well when you're training. Like, can you sustain that training? How do you feel at the end of the day? Having a mid-afternoon slump, that kind of stuff are all other markers that you can use. But don't let yourself get to a point where you're having so few calories that your body then is starting to like go, whoa. Your metabolism is going to slow because your body is very clever and it will do everything it can to protect, you know, your vital organs and being able to exist. So it will hold on to stuff. So it's going to hold on to fat. It's going to hold on to those calories. It's going to slow your metabolism down. Your body doesn't know. It's called starvation mode. It sounds quite extreme, doesn't it? But if you're not eating or going a long time without eating, or you're not eating very much, your body doesn't know that. Say, for example, I'm not going to eat much today because tomorrow I'm going out for a big meal. Your body doesn't know tomorrow you're going out for a big meal. Or it doesn't know that you're on a diet for 3 weeks before you go on holiday, and it's just going to hold on to things, and then it's quite hard to get that back afterwards. So people who chronically undereat and diet, studies have shown that their metabolism slows by about the equivalent of about 500 calories. So when they then kind of up their calorie intake or come off the diet, they're basically body's not adjusted, so they're kind of holding on to more calories, so they end up putting weight back on. And that's a really simplified way of talking about it. But yeah, it's dangerous to go too low. Definitely, I'd say go as high as you can, especially at the start, to lose weight gradually. And then it is just more sustainable as well, because if you're having such a low intake, all you're going to do is want to eat, and then at some point you're just going to massively binge out on something, and then you feel terrible, and it's not your fault. That's physiology. It's not you having bad willpower. That's physiology. I'm going on a rant now, but if you're chronically under eating, at some point your body's going to go whoa, and your mind is going to go, I need this food. yeah, it's just the body is very, very clever at priming itself to survive. I think that's all the questions from